excited? How many of you excited? Give me a hashtag excited. Give me a hashtag drum roll, because we are about to bring one of my closest friends, she's just so dear, one of my longest brand building clients. We've traveled the world together. She's been on one of my brand building cruises. She's been to France, my home in France. We've done loads and loads of stuff together to build her brand, and I couldn't be more proud that Ruth is kicking off this whole RippleFest. So ladies and gentlemen, give us a big rapturous round of applause for the amazing, the one and only Life Liberator, Miss Ruth Driscoll. Ruth Driscoll. I'll put my teeth in. Ruth Driscoll. There you go. Ruth, welcome to RippleFest, my darling.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me along, Sammy. It's always such a pleasure to spend any time with you.
Oh, likewise. And we go back so far. And I mean, I remember watching your story, watching you stand on stage, sharing your story. And I remember I was leant against the wall watching you on stage, and you were talking about the remote control, and maybe we'll get to that in this session. You were talking about the remote control, and I was in a very emotionally abusive relationship at that time. And I remember you saying the classic words that you say. I'm not going to give it away just in case you're going to share it today, but you said these words, and it just, you know, when something goes through your whole body, it's like it impacts on your whole nervous system. And those words you spoke from stage, they were liberating enough for me to walk away from that relationship, and it was the best move that I made. So Ruth, for those that don't know you, please share with us what you do and who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Ruth Driscoll, and my business is the Life Liberator, and I have to thank you, Sammy, for that name, which means that what I do is to lead those who are either in or have been in manipulative, controlling, abusive relationships, leading them into empowerment and freedom. And we do that through a process that I call elegant assertiveness. So it's knowing how to be able to speak your truth, to be able to safely stay congruent with who you are, and give that message to that person who is trying to control your life, that you are just not going to be pushed around anymore.
Yeah, and my gosh, there's such a need for the work that you're doing.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, sadly, like you say. And I think through lockdown that actually impacted a whole lot worse, didn't it? Did you end up with more situations through lockdown?
Well, the situations that I ended up with in lockdown were more about supporting people to look out for those who may be trapped inside a manipulative and even abusive relationship. It was the signs to look out for, because obviously people who were themselves actually trapped had limited means of accessing any kind of support. There were a few cases where I knew somebody was in a potentially worrying situation, and it was looking at where we could put a support mechanism in place to have a lifeline that they could get out quick if they needed to, because it is that helplessness sometimes, especially if it's in a physically abusive relationship, just not knowing how you're going to get out and where you're going to go. But I also deal with people who are going through divorce, perhaps from a very difficult person. And when any situation where you're dealing with somebody whose behavior is toxic, somebody who seems to consistently make you feel bad about who you are. And the trouble is that when you're in that kind of a relationship, it's almost like you're in the worst place to be able to do something about it yourself, because you've been so eroded. Your whole self-confidence, your self-esteem, even your sense of who you are. You just, it's like you're living your life inside a washing machine drum, and you don't even know which way's up anymore.
Yeah.
So it's very bewildering, very confusing, and quite frightening also.
Yeah, and also it's as frightening for us to be on the outside of it and not knowing what to do, as it is to be in it and not know what to do. But Ruth, you found ways. I love that you created the Cupcake Club so that it was like a you know, a way of disguising it, just in case women did need to get that help. Because with the brand you're building and the movement you're making, it's not such a one where people can kind of put their hand up and go, yay, I'm going to run to the back of the room. It's not that kind of business, is it? So how have you got around that? Because there will be other ripple makers here who have that discreet type business that also need to do something like that. How did you, I remember us brainstorming this when we were on the cruise in Mexico.
Yes. Well, I mean, really, it is a case of thank goodness for online ways of reaching people, because there you can sort of, you know, you can put messages out where you can really target that, and they're a, you know, they're a hidden audience, so it's not like even you there's one special place you could go to find people. But so I know one of the things that you taught me, Sammy, was the importance of that visibility. So the more that people see you, the more that people hear. I mean, even like, you know, being here with you, it's just, you know, another way of just getting that message out there, that people know there is something that they can do. And the same, you know, I take as many opportunities as I can to be on stage and share my story and part of the message of the journey out from this. Because again, you know, people on the day and in the room, they may not reach out, but later on, they do, you know, you'll get a little email, you know, to say, oh, you know, saw you on stage and is it, you know, I need to talk to you. So it's finding those sort of subtle ways in which you can get that message out there are really important. Yeah, and, you know, doing as much of that as you can, which is what I'm working on doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point that you just mentioned there, Ruth, because I think so often when we're building a brand, we you know, and there is a time for likes and comments and shares, absolutely. We've got the amazing brand amplifier backstage who's coming on next, but you know, when you're building that brand, sometimes we can take so much notice of the likes and comments that we feel you know, sad that not enough people are getting involved, but that doesn't mean they're not seeing you, does it? So we have to have that voice and forget about the likes and shares for a moment and say, do you know what, I'm going to stand up anyway. I'm going to get my message out there anyway. I'm going to speak as often as I can anyway, because there might be someone that just happens to see it. They don't comment, but they send you that message privately and say, I need some help. So I think that's a really important message you've got there. Ruth, we're motoring on for time here. I know you've got an activity that you'd like to do with our ripple makers today, because conflict isn't just in relationships, it's also at work, it's in business. There's so many places that this happens to us and we can really sabotage ourselves. So Ruth, what do you want to do with us today?
Well, this was really, you know, because I myself was in an abusive relationship, which is obviously part of the story I tell. One of the important lessons that I discovered was, it's a crucial part of my story as well, where I just had that realization that when somebody says to me, Ruth, I need help, I just say, oh, yes, of course. And then I'm sort of backtracking, thinking, OK, how the heck can I do this? And I was in a really potentially compromising situation with my abusive partner at that time. And it hit me almost like, you know, a great big punch in the stomach. Oh, my God, the problem is not him, that my battle actually is not him. The battle's with me. And so I had to sort of, you know, when I was on my journey of recovering from this, because I became very ill after it, and discovering, well, what is it about me? What made me so vulnerable to those toxic messages and negativity about myself that I sort of took on? And I realized that, you know, a big component of this is self-sabotage. And so I do a little exercise with clients to kind of highlight this. So, you know, if you've got a paper and pen, it's thinking about what are your qualities? Because, you know, so often people who are in these kind of relationships, they've actually got some really strong, compassionate qualities which is, you know, what makes that person sort of, you know, gravitate towards them. So it's just now writing a few very simple sentences about your qualities. Like, for example, you might say, I am kind.
So let's get these in the comments, guys and girls, actually. You know,
that would be great.
Journal more later, because I'd love to see what those comments are. So
yeah, so just very simple sentence. I am supportive. I am generous. I am loyal. I am forgiving. So it's, you know, comments like that, just making those very simple sentences about the qualities that you know that you have, that you possess. So that when you look at that list, you think to yourself, you know what, I should be valued and cherished for being a person with these qualities, which indeed you should. But now we're going to do one little thing that's just going to change entirely what's going on inside that sentence. You're going to add in the word to, T-O-O.
Oh, that just went right through me.
I am too kind.
Wow. Fuck.
I am too loyal. I am too generous.
Wow.
I'm too forgiving. Because it's there inside that tiny little word that you potentially sabotage yourself. I call this too syndrome. Because I know I suffered very badly from too syndrome. Yeah. And the whole point is that what you don't want is to lose those amazing qualities that you have. But you've got to recognize where you're suffering from too syndrome, and therefore become a wiser version of who you are, so that, you know, yes, there are those people that you'll want to still be too kind to, perhaps, you know, like the children, the grandchildren, but it's always being cautious that you are not then allowing those who would use you for those very qualities of kindness, supportiveness, generosity, to feed themselves, as opposed to being there to give back to you and be kind and supportive and generous in return.
My goodness, Ruth, that's such a powerful exercise, and one that we need to be aware of, because then we can set those graceful boundaries. We don't have to set up brick walls. We don't have to pour lots of layers over like that Russian doll. We don't have to do that.
No, exactly.
What we can do is that graceful assertiveness, which is what you teach. Well, Ruth, we're coming up to the end of this session. I want to dive in more. I'm gonna have to get you back, but what can we do to reach out to you if anybody has heard something that they think, I'd love to collaborate with you, I'd love to connect with you, I'd love your help? How can they reach out to you, Ruth?
Yeah, well, it would be wonderful to hear from anyone, you know, especially if you need to just have a little clarity call, a complimentary clarity call, to just talk through what you're going through. And then we can talk about, you know, what support you might be able to need. So email me. It's ruth@thelifelibrator.org. It's a .org,
okay,
rather than a .com, a .org.
Yeah.
ruth@thelifelibrator.org.
Brilliant. Can somebody type that into the comments for us, please, so that I can continue focusing here? So ruth@thelifelibrator.org.
That's it. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Ruth, I love you so much. Like, we've been on such a journey together, and my goodness, I've watched you flourish. I now watch you coaching, mentoring, and growing others using the very gifts that you've gone through hell and high water to gain the wisdom that you have, and now you're able to support others. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our ripple makers with tonight before we move on?
Well, just to say that I think that, you know, the greatest value that you can always have is your integrity, and your superpower is the ability to be able to stay calm. Calmness is a superpower. And I know, Sammy, you've taught me so much about the brand values of your business as well. And I absolutely cherish the lessons that I learned from you there. because that, you know, underpins everything that I do as the Life Liberator.
Oh, well, Ruth, thank you so much for dropping in with us at One Drop for the RippleFest this month, and I look forward to getting you back on to a future session. Probably not a RippleFest for a while because you're on this RippleFest, but I think what would be great is to have you share your story into the One Drop movement group, because it goes through me every time. I remember when we were on the beach in Mexico somewhere, and
Right.
Bob Doyle from The Secret was there with his girlfriend, and I said, Ruth, show him your story, tell him your story. And you actually told the story as if you were on stage, but you were sat in your chair, and Bob's there like on the edge of his seat, and you know, we were crying, we were laughing. Your story is so magical. I want to get you back to share the story. Guys and girls, if you want to hear Ruth's story, give us a Ruth in the comments. I'm pretty sure it's going to be full of those as we go through. Ruth, thank you so much. I love you. If you're going to stick around, I'd love you to stay backstage, and we're going to get our next speaker on. So Ruth, thank you so much. Give it up for Ruth.